Hello, everyone, and welcome to Generative AI Meets Universal Design for Learning. My name is Anwar, excuse me. My name is Anwar Hijaz, and I'm a political science faculty member at Saddleback College and a faculty mentor for CVC at One. I am now very pleased to introduce our wonderful facilitator. Dr. Gloria Washington is an instructional designer at the University of South Carolina Center for Teaching Excellence, where she draws on over 26 years of experience in higher education to support faculty in designing effective, engaging, and inclusive learning experiences. She is the immediate past president of the Association for Distance Education Independent Learning and serves as an associate editor for the International Journal of Innovative Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. Dr. Washington specializes in the pedagogical integration of technology to enhance teaching and learning and is the author of the blog Pedagogy Before Technology, where she explores strategies for meaningful and intentional use of emerging technologies in education. During this webinar, we will also be linking a survey for you all to provide feedback. We will be dropping a link in the chat about 40 minutes in the survey and then every 15 minutes after that. We ask that you please fill out the survey to help us in creating programming that is more tailored to the needs of our system moving forward. Lastly, while @One offers badges as proof of completion for our courses, we do not provide badging for attending this webinar. However, if your institution requires proof of attendance for flex credit or professional development, please remain until the end of the webinar, complete the survey, and request a copy of your responses to be sent through the Google form. You can use that as confirmation for your attendance. Thank you so much, and I'll go ahead and turn it into Dr. Washington.
Thank you, everyone, for joining our session today, Generative AI Meets Universal Design for Learning. So before we jump into content for the webinar, I would like you to tell me how you feel about generative AI, and I'm going to drop a link to the word cloud into the chat area. And so if you can share one word that describes how you currently feel about using AI in your teaching. Are you excited? Are you cautious? Are you skeptical? And you should have that in the chat. I would drop it again, and then I'm going to go to the Mentimeter to see our responses. So it looks like, it looks like the biggest word that's showing so far is excited, hopeful, mixed, great, exhausted. Yes, that's a good word to use. Helpful, inspired, optimistic. I see unavoidable. Great. Thank you so much for those responses. Get back over here to this screen. Trying to work between the two screens. So this session is all about exploring generative AI potential while thinking critically about its role in teaching and learning. So no matter how you're feeling, the hope is by the end of this webinar, you will have gained some new knowledge as far as using generative AI in teaching and learning. So in today's webinar, we will explore how generative AI can be used to create content, course content, assessments, and activities. So to do this, we'll focus on 3 primary generative AI tools: Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude, each with its own strengths. We'll also use Universal Design for Learning as our pedagogical framework to ensure that AI-generated content is accessible and engaging for all learners. So we'll start briefly by discussing Universal Design for Learning and why it's a useful foundation for integrating generative AI into teaching and learning. UDL is a research-based framework that promotes flexibility in teaching so that all students can engage with the content in ways that best fit them. These three principles represent core frameworks of UDL, where engagement focuses on motivating learners. Representation addresses how information is presented, and action and expression deals with how learners demonstrate what they know. The latest UDL guidelines 3.0 add emphasis on specific themes within each of these principles. So engagement now emphasizes the importance of affirming learners' identities, fostering a sense of belonging, and promoting joy and empathy in the learning process. For representation, there is greater emphasis on representing different identities and perspectives, challenging biases in how information is presented, and valuing multiple ways of knowing and interpreting knowledge. In action and expression, the new guidelines highlight the importance of recognizing and supporting different forms of communication and expression. Oh, sorry, I clicked ahead one too many. Let's see if I can go back. There we go, sorry. So UDL provides a strong foundation for generative integration. It helps us ensure that generative AI is used to improve accessibility, adaptability, and engagement in learning environments. Rather than using AI simply for automation, UDL encourages us to align generative AI tools with effective teaching strategies. For example, it can help engage students by creating interactive and personalized learning experiences. It can enhance representation by providing different ways to present information, making concepts easier to understand. It can support action and expression by giving students flexible options for demonstrating what they know. So what is generative AI? You probably heard me referring to generative artificial intelligence as generative AI, GenAI, or just simply AI. So generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can create new content, including text, images, audio, and even video. It does this by recognizing patterns from vast amounts of data and generating those responses based on what the user inputs into its system. So some of the most commonly used generative AI tools in education include ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is strong in text-based responses, summaries, and structured explanations. Gemini works with multiple formats, text, images, and more, making it great for engagement. And then we have Claude, which focuses on structured thinking, in-depth reasoning, and case-based learning. So to use these different generative AIs, we write prompts and provide those prompts to the actual tool so that we can get that input, we can get the feedback from what we actually gave it. And the quality of the AI generated content is going to depend on how we phrase our prompts. And a well-crafted prompt can lead to clear, relevant, and useful responses, while a vague prompt may result in less effective output. So let's explore some how to write some effective prompts. I better use my keyboard because my mouse wants to jump around on me. So again, the quality of the AI prompt, the responses that we're going to get is going to depend on how we actually write that prompt. So here are 5 what I'm calling best practices for writing effective prompts. There's a lot of prompt writing information, out there on the internet. You probably heard a lot about what's the best way to phrase the actual prompts. So you want to be specific. So you want to add details to your context. The more details you give that generative AI tool, the more it's going to focus and be able to give you a better response. Use clear language to guide the generative AI towards a focused and relevant answer. And then you want to give the generative AI a response, a perspective or a role. You can also set constraints. If in your response you want it to be a certain length, or maybe you want it in a certain format, you can set constraints so that it will control the output that it provides to you. And AI-generated responses improve with refinement. So if you put in the first prompt and you say, oh, that's not really what I was looking for, you can continue to prompt it until you get a better response that you'll like. So you can adjust, you can reframe, you can even rewrite the prompt totally. So you don't have to use all 5 of these practices in every prompt. So the best combination is going to depend on the goal of the prompt and the type of response you need from the generative AI. You will typically always be specific and clear, but you may not necessarily want to give it a specific role. You may not want to set constraints. The first response it gives you may be fine. You may not need to refine it. So you want to keep those effective writing suggestions in mind. So now that it's your time to practice writing some effective prompts. And so what I'd like you to do is to choose one prompt from this slide. And I want you to write a prompt for your discipline. So create an interactive discussion prompt for students on whatever topic. Let's say you're teaching psychology. Maybe you want it on cognitive learning or cognitive processes, representation, action, and expression. And you can type it in if you happen to be on a PC and you can type it somewhere. And I want you to keep it because you're going to use it later on when you do the activity on running it through one of the actual AI tools. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to write a prompt for your specific discipline. And if you would like to share, feel free to drop it into the chat. And I'll take a look in the chat area and, see if anything pops up.
We see a comment, I have no audio. This is set up as a webinar, so there's no way for participants to share their video, but the chat is open, so please feel free to type in any questions or anything you would like to share.
So I do see some prompts coming into the chat area. Thank you for sharing. I see create an ethics case study for community college students who are taking their first accounting course. Generate a list of scenarios where students encounter trigonometry in real life. Great. In library science, create an interactive discussion prompt for students evaluating outline information. Include steps for understanding authority and context and fact checking. Great. Provide examples of primary sources for biologists. And I'll give others some time to drop some prompts in if you like. And again, keep these prompts in mind. We'll use them again later on. Or you can create new prompts. Okay, again, feel free to share your prompts. So the first prompt here is focusing on the UDL principle of engagement. You know, how will we motivate our students to want to participate in the course? We know they need to participate to pass, but you know, how can we give them that extra motivation, that extra boost? Representation. You know, how can we use generative AI so that we can provide different forms of content or provide content in multiple ways? And then action and expression. How can we get away from exam only courses? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So here's a table that kind of outlines and puts it in a framework for us that we can see how the particular generative AI tool is used to align with UDL based on the principle or the prompts. And so each tool has its strengths that align with different UDL principles and instructional goals. So when you're thinking about using generative AI, you want to keep in mind which tool do I need to use based on what is the outcome that I like to see? What is my instructional goal? What are my teaching strategies? So you don't want to just think about the tool. You want to think about first your teaching strategies, the course outcomes, course learning objectives. And so ChatGPT is strong at structured explanations and simplifying complex topics, making it ideal for like representation tasks, like breaking down concepts and providing analogies. Then Gemini is designed for engagement, meaning it is best for creating discussion prompts that encourage interactive and real-world connections. Claude is highly effective for scenario-based learning and making it the best choice for case studies, ethical dilemmas, and even decision-making activities or exercises. So when integrating AI into your teaching, choose the right tool for the task so that it will improve clarity, engagement, and flexibility in your student learning. Use AI tools that best fit your teaching and student learning goals. This makes it easier or clearer that AI should support both instruction and student outcomes. Okay, so again, when you're thinking about integrating generative AI tools into your courses, you want to think first about your instructional goals, your teaching strategies, and the student outcomes. So let's take a look at a couple of prompts. So this is the first prompt for Gemini. Focus on using its visual and interactive learning strengths. So this prompt, explain the greenhouse effect using a real-world analogy, suggests a visual representation to support student learning. So it aligns with the engagement principle by making the greenhouse effect more relatable and interactive. And the UDL 3.0 emphasizes affirming student identity, fostering belonging, and one way to do this is by connecting scientific concepts to real-world experiences students can relate to. So we're going to go and take a look at this prompt ran through Gemini. So I am going to pull this over. And a thumbs up if you can see this on your screen. Great. So I pre-ran this through Gemini, the free version of Gemini. The advanced version is a little better, especially for us as adults and using it for education. I do recommend the advanced version, but you can still get a good response through the free version as well. So we asked it to explain the greenhouse effect, and we wanted it to use a real world analogy. So here's the analogy: a car in the sun. And then if you look at it, it goes on to tell us, imagine a car parked in the sun on a hot day. And then it goes on about the causes that would happen to the interior of the car. And then it tells us how it relates to the greenhouse effect. And so you'll see that it gave us a couple of bullets here: sunlight, car interior, car windows. And then trapped heat is telling us that it represents the warming of the earth due to the greenhouse effect. And then for visual representation, it describes the visual for us. So it's, simple diagram, draw a car in the sun. And so it goes on to give that visual representation. And then key points to emphasize. And then at the end, it gives us a little recap, and you'll notice that it provides us some sources that, of course, you can click on to read further. So you can take this particular response and you can refine it, because keep in mind, the AI may not give you exactly what you want. So you want to refine it to fit the way you want it. And so we can take this and create maybe a handout or create even a lecture based on this content and the analogy, and then add in whatever content that we want to add in. So I'm going to move that over here.
Well, I see a few questions that came in.
Okay, great.
One is, were the AI tools assessed for these principles, or were they based on what the AI company tells us? And then the second one is, what UDL principles, Copilot, and Perplexity AI would fall under?
Okay, the first question was, sorry, come back to me.
Oh, no worries. If you click on questions, you should be able to see them as well.
Okay, I can do that. Let me go.
But no worries, I don't mind reading it.
Okay.
Were the AI tools assessed for these principles? Maybe they're saying, what were the AI tools assessed for these principles, or were they based on what AI company tells us?
Okay, so just based on knowledge of UDL, I guess my personal knowledge, I created these particular prompts that you will be seeing, and based on the strengths of each AI, I determined which prompt I wanted to run through which AI, if that makes sense. And then the other question is Copilot and Perplexity. So Copilot is like ChatGPT. It's great at summarizing. So it could summarize a web page. It could summarize a journal article. If you can open the journal article, like on the web page, you can ask it to summarize it. And then the same for Perplexity, I would put that in the lines of ChatGPT too. So keep in mind, you can run these prompts through once you create a UDL principle prompt, you can run it through multiple AI tools, and you can see which one gives you the best response. And I mean, I do recommend doing that as well. Run the prompt through one, run it through another, compare it and see what it gives you. You can use all the content from one, or you may want to combine all the content. But for purposes of this webinar, I kind of made it simple, and not to compare the different tools, but just to show how each prompt would work in the specific tool. Great. So let's see. So here we have our second prompt, which is for ChatGPT. And again, ChatGPT's strength is in structured summaries and explanations. So I chose this particular prompt, summarize. So starting with the first word, summarize, cognitive load theory for undergraduate psychology students in 3 key points. Keep explanations concise and easy to understand. So let's go see what ChatGPT gave us. I think I'm gonna go see. There we go. And I pre-ran these prompts just ahead of time so that in case we ran out of time, we would have it. Okay, so that was the prompt to summarize. And then we asked it for 3 key points. So it gave us types of cognitive load, it gave us working memory limits, and then effective learning strategies. And then it gave an explanation of each. And so if you were teaching a psychology course, let's say Psychology 101, and you was trying to figure out how can you explain different terms or terminologies and for cognitive load theory, then, you know, after you review this, you could fine tune it, decide that it's not what you want. You could ask ChatGPT for more. You can ask it to refine it. So you can make that decision once you do it. So types of cognitive load. So it talks about your brain processes information in 3 ways. So it gives the 3 ways. It kind of explains difficulty of the task itself, distractions of poor instruction, effort used to understand and store new information. So looking at this from a student view, you know, we might think, okay, it does give a good explanation. It is simplified. And then how can I take this particular information and run with it? Maybe I'm going to do a lecture. Maybe I'm going to give an activity to the student. Maybe I want to develop some questions for a quick quiz, an exit quiz or exit point of exit for end of a lecture. Okay. See. And now let's go. Here's Claude. And Claude was built with the understanding that it would consider ethical issues or biases. It was focused specifically on ethical prompts. So I heard this analogy before where someone said, you know, Claude don't want a person to find out how to build a bomb by asking a prompt in Claude. So this particular prompt sustainability provide 3 different ways students could demonstrate their understanding. And so we wanted to create a business scenario. The company had to make 2 choices between profit and sustainability. And now we want the students to understand about profit and sustainability. So let me move Claude over here to our screen. And so again, I pre-ran it. And it says, it gives it a title, Global Tech Solutions. And so it gives us, you know, a particular company, and it talks about the supply and demand, includes rare minerals. It gives more information, continuing to use these suppliers would maintain their current profit margins. It goes on to tell information about the company's leadership and what they must decide to do, given 3 choices. You know, do they continue with the current suppliers? Do they transition to certified sustainable suppliers or develop a phased-in approach to sustainability? And then ways students could demonstrate using understanding. And so you can pretty much take this information that it gives you, like role play decision analysis, and you can carry it further and create like a role play. You can create a case study, written analysis for the student, or even a proposal. So you can use this as a baseline to develop different ways to assess the student for them to demonstrate what they know, what they learned. Okay, and I'm gonna pause here to see if anybody have any questions at this point. Okay, let's see. I don't see the question thing showing me any numbers. Okay.
There was one question that came in, but I responded to, it was more of a general question. There's no other.
Okay. Okay, great. What is UDL? Universal Design for Learning. Oh, somebody typed it in. Thank you.
Just got a question. Are you able to blanket statement so that the prompt applies all areas of UDL?
You can. It just depends on what's going to be the goal of the instructional goal for putting that blanket in. So you can, it depends. Do I want to want the AI to generate me some blanket prompts on using UDL, or do I want it to focus on an assessment that uses and incorporate all three of the UDLs? So you can do them all in one.
There's another question. How do you protect against hallucinations?
Fact check. We have to keep in mind that these are generative AI, so they're not just, it's not a Google search where it's finding information that's there and pulling it, giving it straight back to us. It's compiling based on the data it was trained on. It's compiling that response. So yes, sometimes what it says is definitely not going to be true. And that's why it's important that we fact check, which is what I'm about to talk about in ethics. Ethical considerations is going to be important to check that, because you know ChatGPT is real good at trying to give you a source that does not exist. Now, the AIs I think are getting better and with less hallucination. But again, we have to keep in mind, we have to fact check and we have to check behind it. We can't just take it at what it says. Let me see. Oops.
Then there was one more. Where can I get more information about the why, what, and how of UDL?
Okay, I will remember to drop a link towards the end or in the middle. When you go to work on your next activity, oh, thank you. Somebody dropped it in for us. So, hand raise, I guess. Can they not hand raise? Thumbs up. How many people are familiar with UDL? Okay, I see some thumbs up coming in. Somebody did. A couple of people raised their hands. Okay, great. It is a great framework in course design in general. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to generative AI, but it could just be in course design, period. For assessments, for example, if you tend to give exams or you tend to have students write papers, you know, UDL tells us in action and expression, give them different choices for them to express it. Maybe they want to do a podcast instead. Maybe they want to do a video instead of a paper. So UDL is a framework that's great for just in general, general course design. So when using generative AI in education, we must consider the ethical implications. So generative AI is trained on existing data sets, which means it can generate misleading and biased content, those hallucinations. So faculty should always fact check AI output before using them in course materials. And so the best way where you can fact check is because you are the expert in your particular discipline. So when you send prompts through in generative AI, because you are that expert, you will be able to see and probably very quickly identify misleading information or information that may guide your students in the wrong direction. Because keep in mind, although generative AI does exist, there is still a human aspect to using these particular tools. And we are the expert. Transparency. Should students be told when AI is used to generate course content or feedback? So we have to think about that question to ourselves. If we're going to use a generative AI to create an assessment, should we tell the student that, GenAI, or should we say, oh, ChatGPT was used to help me create this particular assessment? So it's going to be important to be transparent to your students, because transparency is going to help maintain that trust and clarity in AI's role in learning. Privacy and data security. So some AI tools collect and store input data. So educators should be aware of their institutional policies and avoid entering sensitive information into any AI tool. Academic integrity. AI can be a powerful assistant for brainstorming and learning, but it can also be misused. So setting clear guidelines of its use and letting your students know and making sure that they understand how they can use generative AI in your specific course. And so this is where syllabus statements, putting those generative AI statements in your syllabus, are extremely important. It can't be, in my opinion, it can't be, don't use any generative AI in my course. If you don't want students to use it, tell them why. It may hinder your learning. This is a English writing course, and it's best that if you write your material yourself. You want to kind of, when you put those statements in your syllabus, you want to have conversations with your students about generative AI use. And so let's say you think a student used generative AI to write a paper that they submitted to you. You have to ask yourself, do I immediately turn them into your academic integrity office because I think they use a generative AI? Or do I address it with the student? Do I have a virtual meeting, or do I have a face-to-face meeting? Do I have conversations with the student to say, I read your paper, and just ask them to walk through their process, before, in my opinion, before like just sending them straight to academic integrity. Because if we have the conversations with the students that we should have, when it is a violation, then you will know it's truly a violation. So these are just considerations that help us with responsible AI use and using it effective in education. And so I'm going to move on to.
A few questions came in, Gloria.
Okay. Oh,
that was my alarm with the survey. I'm sorry about that. But for actions and expressions, there are second options besides Claude.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could actually use Gemini and you could actually use ChatGPT. So For action and expression, let's say I'm thinking about, I have them do a paper, but how can I have the student use a generative AI tool as part of writing that paper? So I would go to Google and, go to Gemini, and then I would probably enter in some type of prompt asking Gemini, how can I get students to research, to use an AI tool like yourself to maybe outline or research before they write their paper. If your university is a Microsoft school, you have Microsoft Copilot, when you use that, whatever you do, whatever prompts that you use in Microsoft Copilot, it stays within your university. So unlike ChatGPT, it's just out there to the whole world. Copilot is going to confine it to your particular university. And then depending upon how Copilot is integrated in your university, outside of using it through a web browser, you can also use it as an integration like with Microsoft Word or even Outlook. It can search your emails and find all topics on a particular topic, maybe a meeting you had, and you have this meeting on a regular basis and you want to grab all the agendas, for example. So you can use others. Hopefully that helps. And it was another question.
Yeah, there's one more. How do we know that a student is using a generative AI tool?
We don't know.
Question.
Yeah, we don't know. We can assume, but there, to my knowledge, is still no AI detector that is 100% accurate. So we don't know. Let's say in a writing class, if you got the student to write a draft, and then all of a sudden the final essay they submitted was like just immaculate. It was just too complicated, over the top, nothing compared to the draft. Then you can suspect that maybe they used it. And again, you can have a conversation, but how do we know that students used a generative AI? We don't know. And using AI detectors are like using plagiarism detectors. You know, we all know that the plagiarism detector may come back 50% plagiarized, and it's all because everybody used the same heading, subheading in a document, and it made it seem like it was plagiarized. Okay, was that all the questions?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There are
Okay.
some great responses to the last question in the chat as well.
Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, so responsible AI use. So again, verify that AI generated content. Cross-check it for accuracies and biases before using that AI generated material. Again, you can run the same prompt through several generative AIs to see what responses it actually gives you back. Establish clear AI guidelines. I talked about this. Define appropriate versus inappropriate AI use for students. If students can use generative AI for certain assignments and maybe not for others, you know, make that clear. If they can use it to learn, but not in an assessment, just make sure you make it clear to them. Excuse me. And prioritize privacy and security. Be aware of your institutional policies and the AI data practices at your institution. We want to be careful not to send students information through a generative AI. Actually, we don't want to put it out there anyway in the internet. We want to be careful how we hold on to their privacy. Encourage critical thinking. Use AI as a tool for analysis and discussion, and not just for like content creation. Okay, so now that it's your turn again, we have an activity.
Gloria, before we jump into that, I know
Okay.
we have a hand up from Linda. I'm gonna go ahead and click on allow to talk. I think she might have a question.
Okay.
Linda, you should be able to unmute. Maybe that was from earlier, so I guess we can continue.
Okay. Uh-oh, sorry. Okay, so remember, oh, sorry, I'm just showing all of my Outlook email that's popping up over here. Okay, too many things open at one time. Okay, so for your reflection activity, remember the prompt that you wrote earlier. You can use that same prompt, or you can use, I think I made it wrong, sorry. I am ahead of myself. Here we go. Running your generative AI prompt through one of the generative AIs that we spoke about to see what responses you actually get from the generative AI. So you can use the same prompt you used before. And for this particular activity, I'm asking that you run the specific prompt through the specific generative AI. So for engagement, you're going to use Gemini. This prompt, put in something discipline specific. Representation, the same thing. You want to use ChatGPT. Action and expression, you want to do Claude. Okay. And let's see how they respond to your specific discipline and your prompt. And then I'm going to ask you to think about and reflect on that generative AI response. You won't put it in the chat area or anything, but I just want you to think about it. So I'm going to drop the links to those 3 AI tools. And I dropped the questions for the reflection activity. So take about 3 minutes to run your prompt through, and then look specifically at how that AI responded. Remember, you are the expert in that subject. You are that expert. So how was the response? You know, was it clear? Was it accurate? Is it even useful for teaching and learning? Did it give you what you expected based on your thought and the goal for that particular prompt that you used? And then could you modify it to make it even better? So I'm going to give you some time to run your prompt through a generative AI tool and time to reflect. And while they're working on that, I have a quick question. So we do have the ability to let people come off mic, come on mic.
I believe so.
Okay.
We tested it out once, and maybe someone else wants to ask a question. We'll try it out again.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, thumbs up if you're still doing okay. At this time, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those questions in and I'll take a look at the questions and see if anything comes in.
I see a few comments coming in.
Oh, I was on mute. Let me go in over here.
One said the response from my prompt didn't give me what I wanted. It was overly simplistic. That made me rethink my prompt, edit my prompt, still needs work. It is iterative.
Okay, great. Let's see. Need some more coming in. Okay, the initial output was less than inspired. My prompt, create an interact discussion prompt. Lyric, hit prompt begin, imagine you're a. Oh, that's barely a scenario. So if it doesn't give you what you want, now keep in mind, the prompts on this screen are like basic, just short. You can expand them, you can reflect on them. We will do an exercise here together in a few minutes, where we'll look at refining the prompt to see if what it gives us after that, after the first initial prompt. So we will look at some other prompts as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, I asked ChatGPT to explain metacognition in simple terms and provide an analogy. The result was actually pretty good. Okay, great. Exactly how I explain it to my students, thinking about thinking. I also really like the analogy, so I will begin to use it the next time and explain. The next time I explain it. Great. Thank you for sharing that. And that was from ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is normally my personal preference. I do have the paid version of ChatGPT. I didn't get paid versions from like Claude or Gemini, Perplexity, but ChatGPT seems to normally give me the response that I like. Sometimes it's overly explained stuff or it's too long, but normally I can pull something from the response that it has given me. Okay, somebody else said they got a better response from ChatGPT than Gemini. Okay, so it looked like we had some good reflections happening. Okay, I find it helpful to include in the prompt for community college students. That's true. If you give it more context, give it more content to work with, what type of students, even if it's undergraduate versus graduate, community college students, if you specify the class. So the more information you give it, you will find that it'll give you a better response. Now, I love Claude for case studies and scenario-based simulations. Now, Claude is my go-to for that. Although ChatGPT does just as great of a job, Gemini not so much on that particular stuff. Let's see what else. Okay, we'll do this last one. My prompt in Gemini was create an interactive discussion for an intermediate ESL class based on Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. I edited my prompt and got a very good discussion prompt with several parts that could be used for an entire 75-minute class. Great. I may adjust and perhaps not use all of it. Thank you for sharing that. So in this case, Gemini, gave a good discussion prompt. Okay, so let's see what my time is. We're at about 5 o'clock. So I am going to pull Claude back over so we can take a look at Claude again. So as you recall, we asked Claude to create a business ethics scenario, okay, where a company must choose between profit and sustainability, provide 3 different ways students could demonstrate their understanding. And so it gave us this, but if I go down, and then it asked me, would you like me to expand on any of these approaches and provide additional assessment methods? Okay. So let's see what it's going to give us. I'm going to say, yes, please. And let's see what happens. Okay, so it did it real quick. And so I said, yes, please. So it's very polite back to me. I'll be happy to expand. Okay, so then it says role play decision analysis, expanded. And so beyond the initial stakeholder presentations, this exercise could include, and then it says a second round where stakeholders might negotiate. So it gives us some additional ways to expand this particular role play. And then case study written analysis, expanded. And so we can go through and say, oh, okay, so interviewing a business professionals. Okay, how can I implement that into a case study per se? And then proposals. It even talk about a podcast. So we can use a different assessment method. Stakeholders impact. So just out of curiosity, in the chat, and I know it's a lot of us, if you can type your discipline, what's your discipline? Is it English? Is it marketing, management, ESL? Okay, social work, library science, history, accounting, biology, nutrition. Okay, business and marketing, dance. Okay, I see English, some computer science, Japanese. Interesting. Music and music history. So we have quite a few disciplines represented here. Math, social work, going back. Okay. CTE, biology, Spanish, okay, nutrition. Just trying to go back up. ECE, not sure what that is. That's got to be an educational class, curriculum, maybe. History, library science. Okay, great. So any questions while I move us to the last exercise for today? Okay, so we are at 5:03-ish. So this is a reflection activity, applying generative AI and UDL to your discipline. So I want you to think about which UDL principle do you see the most potential for generative AI in your specific discipline? It could be related to getting teaching materials or content, or creating different assessments to evaluate student learning. So when you think about these three principles, engagement. So with your engagement, let's say you're teaching a history class. How can you motivate students to be engaged in this history class? How can you make it relevant? How can you make World War II or I relevant to the students? Representation. What other ways can you represent your information? Do you need GenAI to create a study guide for your students? And if you aren't familiar with Google Notebook LM, sorry, Google Notebook LM, if you love Google products, I love that because you can take lecture notes and convert it into a podcast. And it's called Google Notebook LM. It does a lot of other things, but one thing is if students prefer to hear about your lecture instead of, if they want to take lecture notes or they want to take any content, it could be an open source textbook chapter. They can put that textbook chapter into Google Notebook LM and it will create a podcast. So now they have an audio version. But like I said, it does a lot. Thank you, Benny, for putting that URL into the chat for us. But I love Google Notebook LM, just a plug out for them. Okay, so let me get back focused. So think about which one of these principles you can apply. Describe one specific way you could use it to support that principle in your course. And what challenges or concerns do you have about using GenAI in teaching and for student learning? So there is a form, and I have a date put on this, but there's a form. I just want you to reflect and think about those things. If you would like to share it in the form, the link to the form up. Let me grab that link. I'm sorry. I thought I put it in my chat documents. I'm just gonna open. Did it pull up for me? It is not. Let me make sure this is gonna give me what, yep. Okay, so let me go to the chat. And we're gonna go ahead and just spend a few minutes on this, since we do have some time. And gotta find my chat again. Okay, there we go. So this is the form that you can put your information in. But for now, I want you to take about 5 minutes just to reflect. You don't have to put anything in the form, but I want you to take 5 minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, and just reflect on these questions and think about your course. Think about maybe a topic that students struggle with. Did the form drop in the chat? Let's see.
Yes, I see. I can drop it. Oh, there you go.
Okay, great. Think about, a subject that students may struggle with. Maybe, you give a lecture and then, the students take a quiz maybe after the lecture and you find that students just aren't getting it. So maybe that's something where you can use that representation UDL. Or let's say you do a lot of exams. Maybe your one course is all exams. As an instructional designer, I run across a lot of instructors that all of their assessments for the students are exams. Exam 1, exam 2, exam 3, and then a final exam. So the only way the student can show and demonstrate what they know is through a test. But what if that student isn't a good test taker? But what if that same student can use that same material from exam 1 and create a podcast? And they can demonstrate what they know in a different way. So if that's the case, then, you can use action and expression. And in fact, you can just put your assessment into ChatGPT for an example and say, oh, create me different ways for students to demonstrate what they know. And then ChatGPT can return some other choices. It may say, oh, role play. It may say podcast. It may say, oh, a visual presentation. So kind of think about that. And I'm talking, so hopefully you can reflect while I'm talking, but I'll be quiet for 1 minute. Okay, so you had a chance to do some reflection. And okay, I'm at 5:11. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to take a prompt. It's going to be a business marketing and consumer behavior prompt. And I'm going to run it through Gemini. And then I'm going to run it through Claude. Gemini, ChatGPT first. Well, no, let me do Gemini first. Then ChatGPT. And let's see what it gives us. So let me just go back here to my browsers. I'm gonna pull this over. Okay, so again, this is a business marketing type of prompt. I saw we did have some marketing people drop in as their discipline, and I'm just gonna run this and let's see. I did ChatGPT first, but okay, generate a interactive discussion prompt. So AI talks about AI. So let's say in this particular business marketing class, you wanted to introduce students to AI, because in the real world of marketing, more than likely they will encounter AI as they get a job. You know, they leave their college, they get a job. It's going to be better if they know how to use generative AI. So you want to start this discussion. And so let's see, how does platforms? So to me, based on my background, I would say these are 3 good prompts I could use. It just depends on what the lecture was before I got to this point. Discuss in small groups and share an example. So they would have to find an example. Maybe you gave them some examples in class. How should companies balance personalization with consumer privacy? So let's take this same prompt. And let's put it, uh-oh, I lost my Gemini. Oh, where's my Gemini? Okay. And let's put it in Gemini. So as we can see, ChatGPT was like straight to the point of the actual questions. You can see that Gemini is like starting with an objective, how to set it up, you know, telling you as the instructor to introduce the concept and then present a scenario. And then here are discussion prompts. So Gemini in this case, Gemini just gave us more information to build from. And so here are the discussion prompts: identify AI influence, analyze the impact, small group activity, role play, the future of AI and consumer decisions. It even does a whole class discussion, individual reflection, interactive elements. So if you was doing this as part of a, let's say, 75-minute lecture, you know, you could break that up by doing some polls and maybe doing a word cloud, encouraging the students to share. So it goes on to tell you how to actually set it up in addition to the prompts. And for the small group role play, it talks about like group 1. Each group can focus on a different area. So group 1 will focus on consumer, group 2 will focus on digital marketer, and then the AI developer. Okay. So you can see how the same prompt can produce different things. So maybe I like the discussion prompts from ChatGPT, but I like how Gemini set up to where I can, you know, what's the objective of the assignment? So students will know, oh, this is a purpose. There's a purpose for me doing this particular assessment or this particular discussion or role play. And so maybe I want to borrow some stuff from here as well. Okay, any questions so far? So we are wrapping up. And again, this reflection activity is optional. I do encourage you to reflect and use the Google form after this webinar so that your peers can see, you know, how you're using AI or how AI can be used in your specific discipline. Maybe you're in music and you posted a prompt and you talked about your challenges, and there's somebody else in music And they can go to this form, so we encourage you to use that. And here are some references for you, which will be in the PowerPoint. I can't remember. Did we share the link to the PowerPoint?
Yes, I shared. I'll drop that in right now again.
Okay, good. Thank you. So questions and comments. So, a question or comment, if you'd like to comment maybe on some responses from ChatGPT or just any general comments. Okay, I'm gonna put a plug in for my blog. So I write a monthly blog four times a year. And so there is a blog article on universal design for learning. So if you want to take a quick read of that to get an overview of UDL, you can. There's another blog article on student responsible AI use as well. And I think I can wrap it up now. Oh, let me see some questions.
I see people asking, Sochi, do you mind dropping the link to the survey again? Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and giving Dr. Washington your attention. Once again, please look to the chat for the survey link to complete it. The survey is very helpful for CBC at one to receive your responses and to also learn how we can improve for future programming. It can also be used and served as a verification of your attendance. If you experience any issues, feel free to reach out to support@cbc.edu. We hope that you will register for other webinars that we'll be offering throughout the term. We'll also drop a link in the chat for all the upcoming webinars that are coming up. And then lastly, this webinar and the associated slides will be available on the CBC at one website. Please allow for a few days for captioning for it to be posted. Thank you all so much. We'll hang around. If anyone has questions, you can drop them in the chat. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. We still have questions for the survey. Let me drop it in right now. And I will also be dropping a link to, or Sochi, I see you're doing it. Thank you so much. A link for the webinars that are coming up, if anyone's interested. I see a question, if we want to use this for flex credit, do we need to stay on? No, just please complete the survey and you'll get a copy of that sent to your email. But if you need more verification, you can email support@cbc.edu. All right, thank you, everyone. I'll just stay on for another minute or two.
Thank you so much.
Needs a link to the survey. Thank you all for those that were already submitted. It's very helpful.
So welcome.
So, Greg, I see your question. There's an internal company, I think, that CBC at one uses for captioning. And I will get back to you to confirm that, but that's what I recall. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Dr. Washington. Thank you, Sochi.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, it looks like it's just us two.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let me see. I clicked on the button. I don't know if I let go. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I'll be sharing the survey data with you, and I really, really
Okay.
appreciate your time, and it was a great session.
Great. Thank you.
162 attendees at one point. So
Great. Great.
yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it's useful for them.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.